My name is Jim Merrill. Jane McCabe, where did she go? Oh, good. She and I will be facilitating this town hall meeting today. Well, just a couple of points before we start. This 95490 Community Town Hall is interested in working towards a collective community process that includes all points of view. So thank you for being here and participating in this grassroots democratic process. We encourage your participation in the ongoing development and planning of this town hall process. If you have ideas or topics that are important to you, please contact anyone on the Town Hall Planning Committee. Currently, the members of that committee are, and please stand, Jack Bauman, Patricia Bauman, Carol Hughes, where did she go? She's here somewhere. Oh, anyway, myself, Jane McCabe, and April Trudell. But if you want to share or are inspired to share any comments or questions today, immediately, or anonymously, there's a basket on that table where you can write some ideas. And there will also be another sign-in sheet if you are very moved to continue this conversation with other people who want to find ways to increase recreation in our community. So how we're going to start today is Brooke McFadden, community member, is going to share her vision of what she would like to see in this community. Then we're going to open up for public comment, brief public comment, to get your brief ideas about what you would like to see. Then the panel will do their presentation, and then we'll open up for general comments and questions. So we'll start with Brooke. Thank you, Brooke.
I'm just a community member. I'm not awesome. I have no title. There's nothing flashy about me. But I'm very opinionated, and I have a lot of passion and a lot of drive about my kids, about my family, and about my community. I've moved every 2 years of my life. I'm a military brat. I've kind of been around the block as far as communities and people and lifestyle, and more importantly, kids and parks. I was privileged to be able to land in Rohnert Park, is where I stopped at one point when my parents broke up. So that's kind of where I stopped and continued through my education. So as I attended Rancho Cotati High School, we had a big recreation center. My mom worked for the city of Rohnert Park for about 22 years. The recreation center that we had in Rohnert Park really is kind of the birthing point of my ideas and concepts of what we could possibly implement within the city of Willits or these boundaries. The benefits of this recreation center that we had, for instance, during high school, every Friday night at this rec center, kids from the age of 12 to 18 went to the rec center from the hours of 6 to 11 o'clock at night. They opened it up. You came in, you paid a $5 flat fee, you got 3 pieces of pizza, you got a soda, and you got 2 cookies. Or you could steal a 3rd cookie if you had some ends, right? They had music. They had local firefighters sometimes would hang around, but definitely always local police authorities were around. I eventually invited one of these officers to my wedding, and I attended his funeral. He was a very, very, very impressive figure in my life. And I initially made these contacts at this recreation center. So every Friday night, it was kind of the thing to do. It was where the cute boys were, it was where the hot music was, and it was where food was for $5. I couldn't buy that type of meal anywhere else in town. I wanted to be there. My friends attended there. It kept me there completely engaged around good people in highly lit rooms, enjoying my time with my other co-friends. And it was safe because I had the invitations to go to the other parties at the other houses, but I was allowed a created opportunity to say no and have still an interesting place to go and hang out, which, to be honest, any kid wants another option. So I was grateful for that. That's how I can say privately and personally that type of concept of recreation has benefited my life immensely. Second to that, I played on basketball team. And when it would rain, the baseball team would come into our smaller gym, and the dance teams that were practicing were in the other smaller gyms, and so the basketball team had to go find a place to go. So we just jumped over to the rec center because it was near the high school. And all of a sudden, it was a big enough gym that there was more than one basket, so that we were able to have the junior varsity and varsity be able to work in there simultaneously for all of our practices and for anything that happened there. It was just such a benefit all around. I had a handout. I'm not sure if people had collected it or if April ended up passing it out. And I just jotted down, for instance, some ideas that I had for a concept of how this could benefit the community, of other things that a group of us or a recreation center or department or group could put together. Youth activities I already mentioned. Mob races. Anyone who's not familiar with those are mud runs, obstacle courses, adventure runs, costume races. These are all considered mob events. It's any age, any group. You come in, you have a flat fee, and you participate in something that's loud and noisy and sometimes messy and fun. And families do it, you know? I mean, it's like the mom and the dad and the kids, and it's like you have foam with a whole bunch of like chalk colors in it, and you walk out all messy, and everyone's smiling, and it's picture ops and a bonding social event, and they're rad. Outdoor yoga, birthday events or a venue where other celebrations could be held. I mean, there's nowhere to have a party in Willits. I mean, any other parent in this room could say if they're going to host a birthday party, you go to Ukiah or you go hit up Fort Bragg. I mean, that's where you're going to find the spaces to offer a venue to do something really spectacular with your kids, or you find somebody with a really big backyard and then you use them for everything they have. You have other fun events that could happen. I've read some things about some haunted trails. So other different communities around in Oregon. I was kind of observing some of the different things that they offer. They have a lot of trails and hike areas, so they created a haunted trail, and that's all decorated and fun, and they invite the people from the community to come and walk through it. They have sleigh rides. You could do those with all of the horses within Willits, and a cool carriage that you could have done with that, with Santa Claus or something, with some photos, a big egg hunt that we could do, dance class, and not only Zumba. I mean dance class like I took a hip-hop class when I was a sophomore in high school. You know, it was awesome. I took a beatboxing class. I'm not amazing, but I mean, I could do something. And it was fun. And it was just different. It was something to offer in my life that I got to do it. Art and craft, swimming, polo. I don't know if any of you have ever played water polo, but you're going to get ripped if you play water polo. Basketball leagues. Unfortunately, my son loves basketball, but in order to play in a league, it's only certain days that happen in Ukiah, and the traveling and the expenditure to be able to do it, and then him feeling inadequate because the other kids have been doing it longer than he has, and it's always this tug and pull. Offering a youth and adult basketball league. Like, I would love to go play basketball, even if it's not just on a women's league. I mean, mixed gendered league, like, let's just play some ball, you know? To have a facility that you could go to do that on a specific night with just round robin with whoever and have a pickup game. I mean, it's something. Indoor soccer, outdoor soccer rocks. Indoor soccer, to have a facility where you can keep that up all seasoned would be excellent. A volleyball league, a tennis class. I don't know if the tennis court is even used at the high school on any other time besides whatever the high schools do. I hope it is. Because I think it would be awesome. A debutante class, a manners class. I've had the privilege of attending debutante classes and learning respectful dance or communication, how to eat correctly, to sit at a table, what the glasses mean, where the forks lay, how to set a table correctly. I learned about patterns and layouts of materials and what blends of colors go well together. Just basic things that sometimes really intrigue some others and some others not. But I felt that it was a benefit to learn those types of basic manners or appropriateness, to feel that you could attend any type of a group. If you ever, heaven forbid, move outside of Willits to another facility, or we're attending a different type... Exactly, attending a different type of a dinner or a setting, you know, that you could feel like you offered something to that table. It did well for me in my confidence. A chef's or a cooking class, food preparation, those basic life skills would be brilliant for any age bracket to be able to happen. Sewing, knitting, dyeing clothes, gardening, any of those things would be fantastic. Piano class, learning another instrument, paintball or a shooting range. I mean, anybody wants to shoot paintball guns. I mean, especially at their parents, you know. I mean, we could... Really, I might invite my mom so I could keep doing that. Parenting classes, marriage classes, communication classes, then dog parks and trainers to be able to come. And all of these, as I was reading throughout in different communities, that they ask for very minimal contributions, $5 per person or whatever. Here's your dog, here's how many hours you're here, here's the days that it happens, we'll provide you with these areas, we'll do the cleanup for any leftover messes from the animals. But at some of these communities, they had dog parks, or they had training courses. And I don't know currently what's happening right now next to the park, where the sheriff's office, I think, has some type of a training yard that's going, that I don't know if we would be able to have a possible allowance to go in there and use that. I think that would be awesome. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, nothing asked, nothing found. So I'm very pro involvement, and I just know that I'm involved a lot with hundreds of the youth within this community. And I typically take them outside to other locations, to other dances or other activities that involve a couple other hundred youth that want to be involved. They want to be around each other, and they want to have a good time. And if we don't create that type of accessibility to have a safe place that can occur, they'll go find it wherever they need to. I mean, hello, we were all kids once, and we know what we want to do. We want to be together, and we want to have fun. And that, I think, working together, we can create an opportunity that it can be a really beneficial opportunity for people to feel connected in our community, and connected and fun, something that makes us smile and we're happy to be a part of. Just in closing, I don't have many of these others, but some of the other interests that I was reading about, they offered these as kind of non-cost, and I'm just going to read them down. These are a couple other ones that people had offered. Music and movement, a walking group, video aerobics group they had, Tai Chi, a core strengthening group, line dancing, different games, bridge and poker, I apologize, Mahjong, I think is what that's called. Mahjong. I play it frequently. Special interests, wood carving, singers, garden appreciation group, a painting group, honoring our memories in a writing class group, knitting and crocheting, a book club, senior law project. So our senior classmen always, to graduate, they have certain things they need to do. And so if they had an opportunity in the community to come and sit down with other people who were willing to say, I would sponsor you, here's what I do, it would take out so much stress that they have at the beginning of their year, because they're just terrified, who am I going to find, and how do I ask them, and what do I do? And it's just like, go to the community group, they'll tell you what to do. But theatrics and bands, and there's several others that are involved there. But those are just a few ideas that I've pulled apart from the internet, from my personal life experiences. So thank you for your time and your listening.
What we're going to try to do now is open up a short public comment section. What we really want to do is to get your ideas about what you want to see. And then what we'll do is, after that part, we will continue with the panel presentation, and then another public comment time for questions and comments, okay?
Wowzer. We had 62 classes in the summer for youth that involved everything from creative writing, theater, welding, making a robot. We had a fall roster that included a memory book and a teen coffee shop that was built and run by the teenagers for a safe place in the evenings with open mic. And we are closing for lack of support.
Hi, I'm Chris Pierce, and I wanted to say something about what Brooke mentioned. Yes, there are people playing on the tennis courts, but they're not playing necessarily tennis, they're playing pickleball. And it started 3 years ago. My husband started it, Rick Pierce, and we have up to 18 people playing. In fact, they can't be here right now because they're on the courts. And you know, the courts are in poor repair, and that is definitely a concern for people. And several of the people out there are seniors, and you know, they're playing, but it's so good for them. So I would say that's number one, one of our priorities, not number one. Also, I'm a swimmer. I've really enjoyed being able to go to the water aerobics the last 3 or 4 years. I would love to see us keep our pool open.
Hello, my name is Cheryl. I'm a small business owner and served on the Willits Charter School Board for 3 years and a founder of the K-5 Charter School here in town. What I would like to see happen is I'd like to see our city have a full Parks and Recreational department similar to Ukiah. My family and I go down 3 nights a week and play softball in Ukiah. It's really fun for the adults, but it's also fun for the children. The reason why I'm requesting, and hopefully can help follow through with the city running their own Parks and Recreational, is we do have soccer, we have baseball for children. The fallback that I see on that is it's ran by volunteers who sometimes have a conflict of interest in the matter, and there are times that funds come up missing, things get misplaced, equipment's ordered at a full price instead of discounted, on ways that you can actually make these leagues better by saving money, by having somebody accountable for what's going through on that. This is my daughter, Aiden. These are some of the ideas that Aiden was telling me about when I was bringing it to our attention.
Movies in the park, music in the park, space programs, art center for kids, year-round swimming, trails on Willits / Brook Trails, Oktoberfest, theater, reading clubs in the park, bike and walking clubs.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aiden.
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to add. I also play with the Willits Brass Group. I forgot about that. And one thing is we brought it to the city's attention about having us play every Monday or every Sunday in the park to get music going in the park. And the first thing that we were asked was, well, who's going to pull the insurance? And we're like, we're willing to volunteer our time, which, you know, a lot of us are small business owners. Tom Allman plays in our group. He's a busy man. And so what we're finding is if we do want to do something, we have to, first of all, find a $1 million policy, which can cost money. We have to find security if we want to have, you know, food and alcohol. But some of those things, I strongly feel that the city should support us in that. There are funds allocated to Park and Recreation. So by having people saying, every week we'll have a new band, we have amazing artists and musicians in our community. So that's where I was going with that.
Thank you.
I put my name on there because a friend who couldn't make it would love to have batting cages here, either publicly or, you know, they might be willing to do it as a business, but I think that would be super fun. And also, I had, from folks that couldn't make it, requests for trails and requests for movies / music in the park.
Hello, I'm Tina, and I work for the Health and Human Services Agency, Public Health, in the Prevention and Planning Unit. And I have been looking at the Arbor Resource Center in Ukiah as a model of something that I would like to bring to the Willits area. This provides different structured activities and open center for youth that is free. I approached my superiors at the county, and I have been tasked to start organizing that for our community. And I actually was told last week that I can start on Tuesday. So I would be happy to begin the organizing process with anyone in the room that is interested on putting something together like that. And there is some support for that from the county, and hopefully we can get some additional support from the city. The Arbor Youth Resource Center. Oh, they have a whole menu of things. They do things like job training for youth. They have a pool table. They have couches. They have meeting rooms. They have little groups that happen every day. Music, just a safe place for kids to be. We have our wonderful kids club that I actually was a part of bringing to this community way back. But we need something for the older kids. I've heard from the Bechtel Grove Middle School Kids Club coordinator that she had 3 high schoolers come to the after-school program this year, and they're not allowed there. They want something. They want to belong somewhere, and I would like to help bring that here.
Yay!
Thank you, Tina.
Bravo. I'm from the Kids Club, and it's almost 15 years ago now that the people in this community got together and tried to form a safe place for the children of Willits to play, grow, and learn. That's our mission. So almost every day of the week there's 250 or 300 kids, and there's parents there. So it's a pretty good captive audience if you want to talk to parents, if you want to come and interview people. Or and Kiwanis meets at our place, Junior Giants, Little League. We have a batting cage. We have lots of vision. But we started small and did really well and grew from there. And we didn't like doing anything that we couldn't do well because the children are precious. And so we have a lot of ideas. We have about 27 or 30 staff, bilingual staff. There's a lot going on there. And there's a lot of cool stuff in this town that's already happening. Yeah. But it's all being done by the same tired people. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see what's the next step to grow and how do we build on what we have.
Chris, are the batting cages open to the public?
Little League and Junior Giants use them.
Okay, but you'd have to set up some access or something.
It's insurance.
Yeah, okay.
You know, insurance is a big deal. And also the reason the ninth graders can't come over, we have 110, 120, 150 middle schoolers, and it is really hard to find staff who want to work with middle schoolers. I don't know how hard it is to find staff who want to work with high schoolers, but middle schoolers are very interesting age group to work with. And it's a challenge. It's very hard to find staff. It's hard to find people who want to work for the kind of pay that is available and for a few hours a day, and to a lot of times be treated pretty poorly by the students because it's just the age. And the high schoolers, they often come back. I mean, we 10, 20 of them coming back, and we don't have the facilities, we don't have the staff, we don't have the funding. The Kids Club, we pretty much will do what our mission is and what we feel we can do well and keeping kids safe. And so we have grown very, very slowly, but in 15 years we've gone from maybe 25 kids and me and Barbara McKee to, maybe 250 or so kids and 27 staff. And a lot of are people that you know and love.
I want to thank you, Chris, because you do that whole team does an outstanding job for our community.
Yeah, and we
I
feel
remember
lucky.
when I came here and you were just setting it up.
Yeah, it's been 15 years.
Yeah. Really.
As I looked at the list over here, I see that there are a lot of youth-oriented projects, and of course that's a great thing. But some of us are simply young in heart and not really so young anymore. For instance, at the swimming pool, there are people that like to swim laps that are not just children. And there are other aspects of recreation that I think are not being here recognized correctly or completely. I think completely is the right word. I think a recreation district not only should include the 5 facilities that are listed there that currently the city has responsibility for, but it should include the Arts Center as well. That is an important feature. Not every kid is athletic, and some of them, such as myself, grew up liking to play music, and others are artists, and that needs to be recognized. And I think that I want to broaden that discussion a little bit. And we're hearing a lot about what people want and what they need. I think we should recognize that where it's all coming from right now and where it has been coming from is the city itself. City government has no obligation to support and provide the facilities that they are currently supporting and providing. And the formation of a recreation district would relieve the city of the burden of maintenance and so on and so forth. It would require, in the case of, let's say, the swimming pool or the art center or the ball fields, an anchor organization that would have an agreement with the city. But in terms of relieving the city of a burden and creating some funding for the physical facilities for the benefit of the community as a whole, the formation of a recreation district, I think, is a great one. It would require a 218 election and a 2/3 majority, but that's our business, getting that done. I I was not able to participate in the meeting at the Arts Center yesterday. I provided some sound equipment for them, but I understand it went quite well, and they did discuss this topic, and were in support of it. Although it was such a large topic compared to the other things they were doing, they just basically wanted to get have things heard over here. So I'm speaking on behalf of them, although I don't represent the Art Center itself, but I would like to speak on behalf of the whole community for a global solution here and some relief for the city from unfunded liabilities that they seem to end up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you. Hi, I just didn't want us to slough past Cheryl's comment there about insurance. I just came back from the Czech Republic, and they are much less restricted by insurance companies and local. They leave people a little bit more leeway to take care of themselves and to think for themselves and to, So, and it shows in their playgrounds, in the recreation areas that are available with nobody there monitoring and so on. Okay, that's not us. But I hear you could be. I hear so often wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ideas like they're coming out today. And then someone will say, can't do it, insurance, and we've got to have $1 million policy and something. And I just want to put that out as, let's not run by that. Let's say, what can we do? Is there some creative way that we can help people with these brilliant ideas and all this youthful enthusiasm and so on to get past these hurdles of sabotaging ourselves over and over and over again? You'll hear people get very jaded. Someone the other day mentioned something about some recreation activities for kids, and she said, nope, can't do it, no way, we can't even look at that idea. And what she was thinking about was the strictures of insurance and policy and so on. So I just, that needs to be part and parcel of everything, and maybe you've managed that in other districts, but I'm too old anymore to not want to see some action with things, and I feel like we just get sabotaged over and over and over and over, or sabotage ourselves. So anybody that has any ideas about how to... Yeah, okay, great. Looking forward to hearing that. Thank you.
I'm Mike Burgess, and I'd like to ask a couple questions or present a couple of things that I don't fully understand. Many of the things that were being talked about when I came in were all things that were generally covered in school when I went to school. They had a homemaking class. They had... Well, they still had them. They still have them too. But from what I understand, those classes have been cut from the school. The rooms are sitting empty. Machinery is sitting there. I was told, well, we can't staff it. No, it's because the students aren't good enough to deserve to take those classes, so you have to have a C or B or something before you can take a special class. When that's taken out of the school venue, then somebody else has to pick up the insurance and build a building and run a facility, and it's a duplication of effort. So maybe the school facilities can be used or leased or opened up somehow when they're sitting idle, however many hours a day they sit idle, instead of trying to build something else or rehabilitate something else that could be a place for that. There's a facility that has been, the Wowzer facility is in the process of closing down. I saw it meeting some of those needs. So there's going to be slack that needs to get picked up somehow. Thank you.
We're going to try to move from the inspiring ideas that all of you have presented here and try to look at all that energy and say, well, try to explore how we can accomplish some of those things. And so I'd like to move into the panel here. Dan Gjerde, County Supervisor, is going to go first here. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, Dan's off.
Hi. I was invited here today because I was on the city council for 14 years in Fort Bragg, and this is my first term on the Board of Supervisors. But probably the main reason I was invited is because the Mendocino Coast has a recreation and park district. So 42 years ago, the people of the Fort Bragg area, so I was 3 years old, they voted to create a Mendocino Coast Recreation Park District. At the time, it was just encompassed the Fort Bragg zip code, sort of like you're talking about here, encompassing the greater Willits zip code area. Over time, additional parts of the Mendocino Coast were inspired by what they were offering there and voted to join it. So in 1982, the Mendocino School District voters voted to join it. And then later in 1989, the Point Arena School District area voters voted to join it. But I want to just point out how that worked, because we are living in a post-Prop 13 world. This was created originally before Prop 13. But basically, as they expanded out, so when the Mendocino School District voters joined it, they brought no property tax to the district. They were in the district, but none of their property tax was shifted to it. So what happened was, as properties sold, so let's say you sold your house, someone else bought it, there was generally an increase in the tax assessment of it because it's now at the new value. Only a tiny sliver of that new increment went to the recreation district, and that was the way it was set up. I suspect that's the way it would work here too, but I think Holly may have done a little more research on this than I have, but I suspect that you would start out with essentially virtually no property tax to the district, and then it would only be some increment as properties resell that you would start to get some money in. And I just kind of want to put this out. I think a rec district is a great idea and it's a great foundation, but it's not going to be a fountain of revenue for anything. The district on the coast, which again has existed as long back as 1973, generates only about $400,000 a year in property tax. So the recreation district employees are not paid very well by government standards and don't have much in the way of benefits. And really, the way it works is they have a number of part-time employees and some full-time employees. The rec district that you see today looks dramatically different than it would otherwise because of the CV Star Center. So most of you have probably visited the CV Star Center in Fort Bragg. That was really envisioned from the beginning to have a recreation center there at that site. So they purchased the property, I think, back in, 78, they purchased that property, 5 acres in the middle of Fort Bragg. And you saw how long that took to bring it to fruition. It took a long time. And really, it moved ahead because of a former Fort Bragg City Council member, Harry Spath, who nobody in town really thought he had any money, but apparently he just kept it all. And he, near the end of his life, walked into the recreation office and said, I'd like to make a little donation. And it turned out to be a little over $1 million in the end, and which was amazing. And that really got it moving to the point where they had a fundraiser, hire someone who could fundraise, and then really the group that took it to the next level and really kicked in millions of dollars was, it turns out that a Fort Bragg High School graduate went to Asia in, the 20s, I think, and started an insurance company that later became known as AIG. So he died, I think, in the 80s. So he's passed away a long time ago, but he had no heirs, and so he created something called the Star Foundation. And another former council member, his mom had dated this guy back in high school. They contacted the Star Foundation back in New York and said, hey, we have got a connection with Mr. Star. And the foundation brought people in a couple times and saw the plans develop and get refined. And they funded, I think, about 17 of the $24 million that it was actually spent building the thing. So these things are not cheap if you build a modern, state-of-the-art recreation center. Particularly swimming pools are very expensive. Indoor pools take a lot, and they take a lot of energy to heat those pools. So they are extremely expensive to maintain. And in spite of everyone's best efforts in trying to design this thing so that it would be self-sufficient, it turns out it wasn't self-sufficient. And so what happened is Fort Bragg, the Recreation Park District, which also had this other project that sort of floundered. They had purchased some property on Highway 20 for a regional park and golf course with the idea of some private investors building the golf course and making revenue off that. Well, market for golf courses have kind of waned a little bit, and economy tanked. So anyway, the rec district was kind of floating a CV Star Center that was losing money and this deficit they had on this property in Highway 20. The net result was they had to go bankrupt, so the deal that was brokered that went to the voters in Fort Bragg was the Recreation and Park District will give the CV Star Center, this $24 million facility, to the city of Fort Bragg. City of Fort Bragg, which has a pretty good track record of managing things, would manage it, be in charge of the finances of the CV Star Center. In exchange, the voters would give a half-cent sales tax for that. So it was a pretty remarkable brokered deal with the voters, if you think about this, because to impose on yourselves as voters a half-cent sales tax for recreation in your community is a pretty big deal. The rec district also is giving 45 or 55, or maybe it's 55% of their property tax. So of that $400,000, about 55 is going to the city for recreation in the city. At the moment, it's all going towards the CV Star Center to build up reserves. They just had a meeting last week. I think it was Wednesday I was at the meeting, where the community was having a meeting similar to this, where they were envisioning stage 2/3, which is the gymnasium part. So if you visited there, there's weight room, exercise room, and then there's and showers and all that, and then there's the pool. But to the north end, it's intended to have that space is set aside for a gym. And so anyway, so we had pretty good attendance at that meeting. That again would take tremendous fundraising to pay for it, because although their reserves are building up slowly, they can't pay for that multi-million-dollar addition. And then finally, as a recreation district, they over the years have received park bond funds. So whereas the city of Willits, city of Fort Bragg, city of Ukiah, county of Mendocino, every time the voters approve a park bond, generally speaking, the legislature will set aside some small amount of money that will go to the cities and the county for recreation. And so because we did have a recreation district on the coast, they also received. So we sort of double dipped on the coast on that fund. However, I would point out, ironically, or maybe you know this, Brook Trails has such a broad definition of what they do that they actually qualify as a recreation district. So they also did receive some park funds. And so anyway, I guess that's most of what I have to add. But I think the main thing is, as a rec district, even with just a couple part-time employees maybe at the beginning, which is most likely what would happen, at least you'd have, one comment I heard earlier from one of the parents was, it'd be nice to have just like somebody to go to that is responsible for organizing softball or soccer. Mm-hmm. And that for years really was the primary function of the rec district when they had such a small budget and a smaller operation, was there was physically a place to go to as a parent to go sign up. So like when I was in the first generation of youth soccer kids, and that was organized through the Recreation and Park District.
I'm just so glad that we're all here today. I just want to put that out there. I had gathered a handful of people that I had talked to over the years about this back in April, and I'm glad to see Adam and a few other folks here, just to sort of brainstorm on this idea. And I want to be clear that I'm not necessarily saying that we should do a recreation district, but I think it's something we should think about. And that's sort of what I was going to talk about a little bit. I think it's safe to say that we would all like more recreation opportunities. I would certainly love to be able to, I would love to have more trails in the city of Willits. I would love to have that central location. I spent some of my time growing up in Monterey, and they had like I don't know if it was a rec district or a department of the city, but I could take classes, and I took a detective class. Fingerprinting and things like that. It was fun. I mean, it was just like a random summer, things to do in the summer. I think we all, want a healthy, thriving community. And now is really the time. The City of Willits, the Chamber of Commerce, the new hospital, they're all activating right now to make sure that Willits remains a wonderful place to be. We're in this time of transition where we know that we're going to have less revenue as a city going forward because we won't have as much drive-through folks buying gas, amongst other things, which fills our revenues. But now is the moment to be doing this, in my opinion. And one area, as we know, that we could use improvement is recreation. So I think Cheryl mentioned it. I think there's about 20 adults, maybe more, that go down to Ukiah for the softball league. So can you raise your hand?
Hundreds.
Okay,
Easy.
but you think from Willits 100?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
right. So this is driving down to Ukiah for games, and you know that they stay and go. I think most people go to Applebee's or something. Yeah. They stay down there and go out to dinner. A local mom that I know takes her daughter to the CB Star Center, and that's like a day trip. You're going over there. I mean, you're not going to pay the little entry fee just to be there for like an hour or two. Like you're staying, you're going to go out to dinner, go to lunch, whatever. So there is a big economic factor to this, that by making our home a nicer place to live, we would be gaining revenue that is currently going elsewhere. So what is a recreation district? Not everybody knows. And it's a government structure. There's many different types of districts, and I brought a little handout that I found online called What is a Special District? In a nerdy way, it's kind of interesting. I also brought my property tax bill, because when you get your tax bill, you can see what districts are assessed on your property taxes. There's also cemetery districts, fire districts, sewer, there's mosquito abatement districts. And there's positives and negatives to this. As Dan mentioned, Brook Trails actually is a recreation district. That's part of their description. However, it's an unfunded. Recreation is not specifically funded in Brook Trails. It's part of their general fund. And that's how the city pays for recreation. It comes out of the general fund. It's not being paid for by fees or sewer, water bills, things like that. So there's positives and negatives of forming a recreation district. One positive would be that there would be a identified revenue source, a separate identified revenue source. Another positive, I think Hal mentioned this, it would take some of the burden off of the city. The city of Willits provides most of the recreation for the Willits area. I mean, most of the facilities, the tennis courts, the pools, the ball fields, those are all in the city of Willits, and we pay for that, even though it's used by the whole area. I mean, I think that would be a positive. And it would also, could potentially, by making this separate group, it would be that central location, but they could also apply for grants. They could also fundraise on their own with just the pure recreation focus. Whereas the city we have a lot of focuses, and some of the primary ones are water and sewer and roads. I mean, those are police. Those are some of the main ones we focus on. So because of that, sometimes recreation gets prioritized a little bit lower. So negatives, it creates additional government. It creates additional bureaucracy. You're making another entity. Is that something we would want to do? It finds and identifies a funding source, but depending on how you think of the dollars flowing around Mendocino County, I tend not to think of it as a finite resource, but there is a limited pool of money. I don't think of it as finite, but it is limited by how many people live here and how much money we make and how much we choose to pay in taxes. So some folks may not choose to do that. I mean, I was looking at my property bill, I was thinking, okay, I pay this much for the fire department. I am down with that. I like having a fire department. I like knowing they're going to come and put the fire out if my house catches on fire. But there's no free funding source. This would be funding that would not be going to the schools or, not going to some other agency. One of the things that's been talked about a lot here locally is our desperate need for a new firehouse. They may choose to do another bond measure or tax measure. It's a guessing game as to what the voters will support. So I think of that as a negative, is that it further dilutes that potential for funding some of these other things. But positive, creates a central hub for organizing. There is a lot that we do already, and I'm so glad that Sabrina's here actually, because the folks that are running youth soccer, all these different groups that are otters, the swim team, they're all doing their things, but sometimes with the same folks. I think my in-laws were doing otters 8 years after their kids had graduated high school. as sort of, and then at some point they just have to let go. And I do worry sometimes that if you don't know the right people, like if you don't know that, Cheryl's the person to get in touch with about this program, if you don't know Cheryl, then how do you necessarily know? And I think the schools help out with some of that, Kids Club helps out with some of that. But having a central catalog,
yes,
that was the other thing I meant to bring. Ukiah's catalog. They've got a catalog of their classes. I think that could be really good to centralize schedules and things like that. But the reason why I say I don't know if I'm not here, gung-ho supporting a recreation district is because there is other options. And our group talked about this the other day when we were discussing whether or not to form a recreation district, and that seemed like the best idea out of the bunch, but as Chris mentioned, the other option is to support what's here. It doesn't have a designated fund, but another option would be for the city to have a recreation department. That's what they do in Ukiah. I just briefly looking, so I don't know if this is accurate, but I show a $1.6 million budget item in their budget for the recreation. That's general fund dollars. So as much as we might want that, because it would be in some ways easier, it would also involve hiring additional staff that we may or may not, our mayor's here, may or may not be able to afford. Even if you have fees to pay for the classes, so even if you're paying a fee to do a class, you still have to have that person, to have the staff, there is a cost to that. So, but that's an option. We could have a city recreation department. Mendocino County Land Trust, they do wonderful trail and restoration work over on the coast, and I've talked to them, and they would love to do more trails and pathways over here. They just need folks to make those connections with them, because they have some skills and knowledge that they could do. The Kids Club, oh my goodness, you guys do so much. But as you mentioned, for a specific age group. And there is all these crazy partnerships, which people may not be aware of. The city owns the building or the property? The building. The school district owns the property, and the Kids Club runs the whole deal. Also, and a state park. The Bechtel Grove Gym is actually not owned by the school district. I believe the Bechtel Grove Gym was built by the city. Okay. So we've got a good, so there's all these, the pool, we share the expense of running the pool with the school district.
The city shares.
The city, excuse me, I say we with them. I'm not speaking on behalf of the city, I'm speaking as myself, sorry about that. But also Boy Scouts, Otters, Little League, these are groups that are providing so much right now, and maybe we should all just support them more, or let them know what it is that we're wanting to have happen. But yet again, not a dedicated funding supply. Willits Center for the Arts, currently going through a transition of its own. At the workshop yesterday, there was all sorts of things brought up about, let's have, art classes. Let's use the space more, not just for concerts, but let's have meetings, and let's have, Patricia, who couldn't make it here today, she really wants to do cultural education. She wants to have some programs to learn about Latino culture and do all sorts of wonderful things. Astronomy, I think someone mentioned that. So maybe that group could take that on. So there's options. And the disadvantage with all these things is that there's not the dedicated funding source. When it comes down to it, we're all volunteers, and we volunteer with so much, and we all individually only have so much money and so many hours in the day. So we also brought up the fact that I think the city and the school district would be interested in relinquishing some control over some of the facilities. And I put a list up there. I'd love if other people filled out some of the things that they're thinking of, but just what we've brainstormed already. The district could take over the pool, the tennis/pickleball courts, gym, skate park. The city would love to not have to take care of the skate park. But I also know that people would love to teach classes on how to skate properly. Hey. The ball fields, there's actually a Boole's Petanque court by the old fields. It's kind of in disrepair, but that used to be a thing. People would go there and play. It's where you roll the balls.
Where is that?
It is between the skate park and the ball fields. And the old...
Like a bocce ball?
Pete Tompkins
Okay. Okay, bocce. Or boules. People are into pétanque. I know a number of them. And as was mentioned, public trails. And a recreation district could provide coordination of art classes, interest classes, bird watching, welding, I put, softball league, basketball, soccer, dance, fitness. So the question is this something that we should do? It's been talked about a number of times. We've talked about the city council. Every time when budget year comes around and we're talking about having to cut things, we go in the hole about $45,000 on the pool every year. It comes up. It comes up frequently. So the question is, should we do this? If we wanted to form a recreation district, and Dan had mentioned this when we got here, one of the things that they have over on the coast is a Friends of the Mendocino Coast Recreation District. And so that group, is a nonprofit that fundraises kind of like the Friends of the Library. So outside the district that maybe could help it get going or happen. If we're interested in doing this, there's a number of steps. You have to apply to LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission. I sit on that board right now. They are the group, every county has one. They're the ones who oversee annexation, district formation. Another part of their role is reducing sprawl and making sure that services are being done appropriately. So they're sort of the gatekeepers to this process, from what I understand. And I've researched this a bit, but I'm still new at it. We would apply to LAFCO. LAFCO would do an analysis. I think it would probably be wise to do an analysis ahead of time, to maybe do a feasibility study to see if it could be done here separately. But LAFCO will do its own analysis. They'll have a public hearing, see what people think, and they'll provide a report with recommendations and could this work. Then they do a protest hearing. And this is one of the things that seems confusing, that you'd have two of these. My understanding is that the protest hearing, if it involved property owners, if the majority of people who would be affected protest, then it stops right there. It doesn't happen. But apparently even after that, then there's an election of the district. Then it's formed. Okay, so in that election, so it's a little unclear to me, does LAFCO run their own election? I'd have to find out more about that. But then the district is formed, but it would have to be a 2/3, as was mentioned, a 2/3 majority. It's not just a simple, so there would have to be a massive public outreach campaign to do that. So, positives and negatives. Our group that when we were sort of tossing this idea out, we were thinking about a number of different boundaries. The boundary that made the most sense was the school district boundary, because we want to make sure that it includes, residents of Brook Trails, the Valley, Pine Mountain. We want to make sure it's the whole area. By using an existing district boundaries, it lowers some of the costs of putting it together, because the data's already been gotten on that, as far as how many people, what the property assessments could be, and things like that. And it would really take an unprecedented level of cooperation between the city of Willits, between Brook Trails, between the school district, because we have all these existing co-sharing deals. We would really need to make sure that everyone was on board. So that's a tall order. And this is a small community with not a lot of income. So given that, I'm just interested to see, by a show of hands, who would be leaning towards a recreation district versus another form. Okay, that's good to know. Compared to another strategy, like lobbying the city to have a recreation department. Okay, there's a few votes for that. Right.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I think they're
wait.
open it.
Yeah, and we are going to open it up to questions,
Yeah.
but that's the gist of my comments. I think this is really a good time to be doing this. I think that there's so much we can do, and if this does nothing else than highlight all the stuff that we have going on already,
Yes.
and make people aware of it, I think it would be a positive thing. But it's a long road. It's not a quick fix. It's not a silver bullet on your budget. It won't be a silver bullet for the city's budget. By not having to do these things, it's not going to give us tons of extra money. we're already, exploring ways to downsize and things like that. But I think that making Willits a wonderful place to live is really why we all choose to live here. I mean, it is a wonderful place, and if we could make it even better, why wouldn't we? So I look forward to the questions and comments.
Thank you, Holly, so much. Okay. I think we all learned that it's going to take a critical amount of people to go forward with a lot of interest, whatever way that is determined that will make something like this happen. And so thank you all for your information and being here. So we're going to open it up to public comment again.
I wanted to
You
say
can add your words.
A third option. We are a community benefit nonprofit. We have worked with a really good business consultant. We have plans to support ourselves with a for-profit product, which would be tiny homes, the way we're looking at it right now. We have 148 youth members right now at Wowzer. The rest are seniors. We do both ends of the spectrum. It's mostly seniors and young people. But one of the businesses that would be going in if we go forward with our plan is a world-class climbing wall that we will use, which would also be for profit, and some of those proceeds would go back into supporting Wowzer, just like tiny homes would go back into supporting Wowzer, because people don't, especially the kids that need it, don't seem to have a lot of money to pay fees. So we had 68 classes this summer that were all free to the community. We would love to keep going. We have announced we're closing. Many other communities have contacted us saying, we have a space for you, we want you there, and they would actually give us some money. So this is something Willits really needs to look at, what maker spaces bring to the community. We had teens get a grant and put their own money into building an after-hours coffee shop that was safe and monitored every night for the teenagers. That is going to be closed too, and they are really crushed. But do think of the resources that are available and that we've worked through. We've done a lot of work on what it takes to make it work, to be viable. And the biggest thing is community support. The numbers of people, the bodies in there. This was an amazing place. People walk in, their jaws drop, and they go, wow. It's unlike any other space you've been in.
Thank you, Cindy.
I didn't put my hand up for the Recreation District, although it really sounds like a really great idea. However, I see the downsides are pretty formidable. And what I would like to at least explore, I think a lot of it is the devil's in the details. If you have a recreation district, there might be a real temptation to just say, oh, that new district will solve everything, and we just hire some staff and we build more buildings or whatever it is. It could become a real giant money sink. It would be great, but we don't have that kind of money in our community. I don't know that we do. We also have been hearing we've got tremendous amount of stuff already happening. Admittedly, relying a lot on volunteers. But I think I would love to explore some revenue sharing possibilities with the county. And I was really pleased to hear what Tina had to say. The population of our zip code is 13,000. The population of the city of Willits is 5,000. So there's at least 8,000 people benefiting from what the city of Willits is now mostly providing. It's not exclusively, because Brookfield has some, and there may be some others. But there's got to be some help to the city. We have too big of a burden on the 5,000, relatively low-income population of the city, and we need to spread that burden and have more help from the county. But I love the idea of a central clearinghouse that would put together what we already have to offer. we don't know. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And there were all sorts of things that just came to light that I never heard about before. And it really would be great to have somebody put that all together. And somebody that you could phone and ask, where's our, Recreation Central?
My name's Bill. I have pluses and minuses. I was at the Art Center meeting yesterday, and there was a great thing that was done there. We did a SWOT analysis of the Art Center, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And when we analyzed those 4 things, and I'm not going to try to explain them right now, but it's a good way to analyze and decide how you can take the weaknesses and threats and figure out how you can then provide solutions by analyzing your opportunities and your strengths. And it's a great way to analyze something like this. I have some pluses and minuses on this particular thing. Pluses, I think it enhances the quality of life in our area. That's clearly an advantage. It attracts potential residents to our area who may have the financial resources to start enhancing the revenues that we need here. And right now, we don't always have the attractions to this area that we need to attract those people, although the new hospital is certainly a gigantic move in that direction. Not only that, but the beauty of the area, all the things that we are here for. We need to build on those things. The district, I think, is a good idea as opposed to the city, because clearly the city, which is less than 5,000 people, according if you drive into town and look at the sign, it oftentimes gets saddled with the paying for things that the entire 95490 area code utilize, and that's not a good. The city obviously can't afford to do that, so doing it as a district creates a more equitable funding base. There's a big trust issue that's the elephant on the table that's being ignored right now, and that is there's been a terrible misallocation of tax money, and I'm going to say the library tax was misallocated and misused. The county, I think, is largely responsible for that, and I believe it was the 1993 fire and police assessment that was, I believe, a half a cent or quarter cent tax that was statewide, and each area got a portion of that. And those funds in both of those cases by the county went into the general fund instead of going into the things that they were allocated for. That is eroding the trust of the citizens for how taxing ourselves for special things like this are being used, and that has to be addressed. I think the county and the county CEO have to stand up and say, explain why that happened and fix it, because I don't trust them anymore. I would not assess myself anymore. Anymore. I'm very afraid of bonds because of the way the school bond thing came about. So it's not a good thing. The insurance issues cannot be skirted. I see people roll their eyes and say, "Oh crap." Well, sorry. Those are real issues. Insurance issues, whether we like it or not, whether you feel it's valid or not, those are issues that we need to learn how to deal with and not roll our eyes, but figure out. Insurance companies, just like lenders and anybody else, their first thing that they do is assess risk, and then they charge you for it. So we have to do the assessing of the risk first and fix it so that they don't have to. And then the third thing is, and this is another trust issue, Brook Trails in the city of Willits have spent well over $1 million in a pissing match with each other, suing each other. And so I don't trust them anymore, how they handle their disputes. They don't handle them like adults. They have to handle ratepayer and taxpayer funds in a responsible way, and instead of suing each other, they have to work things out like adults. And so those things have to be dealt with, and then I'm all for this.
Thank you, Bill.
Can I just say something here? Because I'm sort of representing the county here in an indirect way. So on the, we'll go over the two issues you raised with the county. So the Prop 172 funds, which is the half-cent sales tax enacted by California voters in 1983, and it was to make permanent a supplement to counties and cities and other local governments that lost property tax dollars. So back when there was another recession during Governor Wilson's era, there was a takeaway from local government of property taxes shifted to schools, and so this half-cent sales tax was to make them whole. And the bargain that was struck, as you've heard extensively reported on KZUX, was that law enforcement specifically was called out in this statewide initiative to be made whole so they weren't going to lose funds out of the transaction. It was also presumably what the voters were likely to support. I'm just guessing why they structured it that way. So in Mendocino County's case, and this has been explained to a number of people who were interviewed on KZUX but who didn't point this out in their interview, which is the County of Mendocino way back in 1992-93 was not giving any money to fire departments. Other local governments in California were, and that's why the initiative included fire departments as well as police, sheriff, DA, public defender in the initiative. But because Mendocino County was not giving money to fire departments, they weren't losing any money in the takeaway, and therefore they weren't getting any money in the county's allocation of its share of the Prop 172 funds. You're very right in that the county is very wrong in that it has not been line iteming, making those funds clearly allocated through a line item process. That will be corrected. And I don't know why the county hasn't done it correctly. It won't happen going forward. And we did just adopt our final budget. I don't think we're going to change our budget we just adopted, but we can certainly change it going forward. And there needs to be a full counting of how the funds were spent up until now. I think just common sense will tell you, since public safety employees have the most expensive pension plan, and because they have not seen a reduction in their workforce to the same extent as other county departments, I think common sense will tell you there's no. It will be shocking to see if they had any reduction in a percentage of the county budget. You know, I seriously doubt when the accounting's done that you'll see any cuts that they sustained that was not allowed under Prop 172. But anyway, then on the other issue of the library, that is also being fixed. So, for example, there's a couple different issues that the Library Advisory Board's been looking at, as well as the grand jury. And I'm on an ad hoc committee with Supervisor John McCowan looking into this. We're about to give a report that will be made public at our board meeting on October 20th. And what you'll see is that the auditor, at the public's request and at our request, he's gone back through the documents and found that, yes, as the grand jury said, there were grant funds, insurance funds, and funds from the Friends of Fort Bragg Library that went into the Fort Bragg Library branch. Those funds he's now identified should not have been charged against the library fund in terms of, because they weren't county contributions. The net effect is that it's going to be a reallocation to the library fund of about $400,000 and it's going to be spread over probably 10 years. So it'll be $40,000 something a year for 10 years. So they're going to be made whole. Secondly, we're digging a little deeper because we believe the same thing may have happened here at the Willits Library. I've seen some preliminary information. It looks like that was also the case. Not quite in the same magnitude, but at $400-something thousand. Again, that will, assuming that is proven out, that will also get reallocated. The fee that the county was charging towards that allocation will get reallocated back out to the library fund. So the library will be made whole on that. Finally, they're also looking at at just sort of like common supplies and minor capital equipment. Like I believe someone's talking about some legendary 40-year-old, 50-year-old oak card catalog that shouldn't be on the list. Well, that will also get corrected. But as it was explained at a recent Friends of the Library or the Library Advisory Board meeting in Point Arena, where Supervisor McCown and I were there, and the library director was there, is that part of the issue is that the county just has a very cumbersome way in which it asks each of the departments to account for their materials that then get these fees attached to them that go back to the county for services. In all likelihood, it was simply a library employee who just sort of, okay, it's just one more thing, and they didn't properly respond to it. So it's not like some big sinister grab for money, but it's not that organized. But I think the main takeaway. Yeah, but the main takeaway is there are new eyes looking at things, and things are going to get corrected, and so those issues hopefully will be resolved to everyone's satisfaction in the next 2 to 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
There were a couple of things I heard here today. One that really piqued my interest was people with good ideas that say, oh no, I can't do that. There's the insurance issue. or some other barrier. Why aren't we looking at what are the institutional barriers keeping us from doing what we need to do in this community? We need to be looking at that. One of the things that comes to mind is mountain climbers go to Washington State to climb mountains. Why? Because Washington State, right in their state constitution, says you can't sue yourself. And guess what? Public property is yourself. So when you go out and do stupid things, you can't sue the state. Why don't we do something like that around here? Why is the insurance so expensive? Because people sue when they're stupid. Why do we allow that? We could write legislation here for this town that says, hey, in this town, this is how we do that. We don't have to do it how the rest of the world does it. We can do it how we want it done. We can take care of ourselves. Think about it.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Shirley. It's great to see everybody here. A few months ago, there was at least a passing thought at a city council meeting that the pool might actually even have to be closed. And for me, that brought it all back like, wait a minute. There has to be a way for this community to support that pool and our other recreation areas. So I'm wondering whether we're going to come out of this meeting with an ad hoc committee that can do a feasibility study to say, is it better to have a city department or a district or a third or fourth or fifth option? What kind of movement forward can we make? This is a great group and beautiful ideas, and let's keep moving.
What I would like is if you are interested in the recreation district option and you've signed in, hopefully everyone has signed in at the front desk, could you put a star next to your name and I will be in touch with you? So make sure you sign it. If you're interested in being part of a continued conversation on this track, because one of the things about the town hall meetings is that they are supposed to hopefully generate interest and get different ideas out there, but the town hall group, as wonderful as they are not also going to see this project forward. So they want to identify people in the community that are interested in this. A lot of folks couldn't come. I talked to a number of people that were like, I can't come, but batting cages. Anyway, so just make sure that you put your contact information.
I have a quick question. When I came to this community 38 years ago, actually when my husband came 39 years ago, I thought there was a recreation department because he played volleyball in the gym at the high school, and there seemed to be organized activities.
You know, there was.
Okay.
And Bruce could probably speak to this, and I've talked to Dave Madrigal, who also couldn't be here today. Okay. He said that there was, I don't know if it was an official department, but there was someone at the city that was in charge of doing recreation stuff. Okay. My understanding is that insurance became too much of an issue. Okay. And I just want to agree with Carlin. That doesn't have to stop us. I mean, we have insurance because in our current framework, you can be sued. And there is a reason to have that ability. You know, if someone's doing horribly negligent, you know, with spikes sticking out of the ground, like I can understand why you want to have that ability. Yeah. But we shouldn't let it stop us. The city has such a high insurance thing because people sue the city a lot, unfortunately, and that's just a reality we have to deal with. But it shouldn't stop us. It shouldn't prevent things from going forward. You know, you can have public trails on your property and sign an agreement that says, you know, this is a dirt track. If you trip and fall, it is your own response. You know, there are protections like and things that we could do. Yeah.
Okay,
so
well,
thank you.
Thanks for answering that. And I feel like Hal touched on this and I touched on this, but I want to stress the fact that I'm really concerned about our seniors who have a wealth of experience and income leaving our communities after they retire. And I really feel that we have to provide opportunities for them and amenities and recreation for them to want to stay.
Water aerobics.
I'm still Mike. two things I'd like to speak about. One is the fees. The city has a tax base of $5,000, and there's another $8,000 in the zip code that it's not fair to ask the city to support a greater number of people than are in the city with the city's own recreation district. So there should be money coming from the county or a new district. The other thing is the Little Lake Grange has just finished a major remodeling of the hall, and they have a junior Grange group and a youth Grange group that's open to the Grange members, and they're also open to hosting fundraisers. They'll co-sponsor a fundraiser or something. If there's something that's really good for the community, the Grange will say, we will sponsor this, and you can use our facility and our insurance. If the Grange doesn't sponsor it, you can rent the hall and bring your own payment and your own insurance. But that's another place that's open for reasonably good ideas of places to not have to build from scratch. There's already a building and infrastructure there. Thanks.
And we have a line, but I just want to put out the invitation to either Denise or Tim, if you would want to talk about Brook Trails and what you are currently doing for recreation. There's other people in the order, but maybe one of you would be willing to speak to how you currently fund the park course and all you have up there.
I'm really glad for the opportunity for all of us to get together and discuss ideas. But like I heard Holly say, I would really like to see some people that are very enthusiastic about these ideas put their name down and go forward with the committee, because I really believe that we could do something. We could actually start a recreation district. It wasn't thought to be very possible in Brook Trails that we would get an increase in our fire tax up there. But by God, we did it. It took a 2/3 vote, the same vote it would take for this. But honestly, we can do this. If we decide at the beginning that it's too much for us to do, we'll be absolutely correct. It will be too much for us to do. But I see a lot of young people here. I see more young people here than I've ever seen at any of the meetings we've had. That's the kind of energy we need. I'm 71. I'm not it. I have a quote here from a young person that couldn't be here today, Antonia Partridge.
She was one who goes to the CV Star Center.
Right. One of the reasons Josh and I are considering moving to another area is because we have a complete lack of park and recreation activities here. We drive clear to Fort Bragg for a Tiny Tots tumbling program. Some other ideas she had was, why couldn't the water district, with some kind of insurance, be open to the for public use? Where she lived in Marin County, they did that. Park course, it would be excellent to reopen the trails to Brook Trails. I know all the story about that. I was on that committee. Parks and recreation, we need some kind of summer day camp where all ages come, and there's arts and crafts and archery and ceramics and painting. You know, here's some great ideas. Here's a young couple. And I can tell you, I'm concerned about older people leaving here, but not nearly as much as I'm concerned about young people leaving here. We need your strength and your energy. We need your children. We need your ideas. We need you. So don't leave. Put your name on the list, for God's sakes. I'll be willing to help. So, you know, I really believe this is a possibility. If not the recreation district, then something that would give us some kind of park and recreation person or something to help coordinate, because we do have a lot of facilities. As Mike just said, the Grange is one great big facility, and we are open to membership. It's very cheap to join.
So I'm Tina again, and I just wanted to make sure that I let it be known I am not representing the county. So please, what I was tasked to do, a very small percentage of my time, is to really start working with different community organizations within our town to think about, do we use existing resources, existing groups, or can we sustain a standalone for the Youth Resource Center that I'm speaking of? and using the arbor as a model, but not being an arbor program. So I just heard about this meeting on Friday, and so there was, it was just kind of serendipitous, but I have been in this community for a long time. I've worked with youth in our community, Laytonville, Leggett, for almost 20 years, and I have a lot of contacts in the community. I have a lot of experience helping write and receive and implement grants that have provided services to our community for years and years. So I have a group of 11 kids that meet with me after school because they care about their community, and we want to keep that going for the high school students. So I just wanted to make sure that it was known that I am not representing the county. I am employed by Public Health Prevention and Planning Unit, but I'm also a community member, and my name is on the list.
Thank you, Tina.
So I do want to remind us, I keep hearing maybe we don't have money. I disagree. Our community has a ton of money, whether it's on the books or off the books. Mm-hmm. If the hospital can raise $80,000 in a bundle of money when nobody's looking as a potluck, donation, we as a whole here can raise $80,000 as we turn our backs, as people put cash in. I find that it's hard for people to donate because they want to trace that money. And I'm not saying anything on their side of where that money's coming from, but I'll accept that money. So let's rally up and get both sides of the cash in our community. I liked how I wanted to reiterate, using the facilities that we do have in our community, and that to not let the misappropriations of bonds and to stop us. Maybe we can use that to learn from and be transparent on how we're actually going to do it. Because the school bond was a big one for me. Young voter, voted for it, thought it was going to be great, giving local jobs, keeping the money in our community. And so that does scare me, but it also makes me say, all right, let's be clear. Let's not make empty promises either. That's something we shouldn't have promised on that bond anyways. But I'm for it. I'll be signed on the list, and I will go collect as much money as I can.
Thank you. Thank you. And as Sabrina gets up here, and of course she's one of them, this is a bit of a self-selecting group, but a number of these people, Tina, Sabrina, Cheryl, have all put forward tons of their own time, Brooke, to make the existing programs that exist go, and are doing a ton in their circles, because we don't always get together. This is sort of a different group, so I'm just really glad that you guys are here to put your 2 cents in.
I'm really happy to be here. I'm sorry I was late today, so I didn't hear all the early ideas, but just sitting here, all these wonderful ideas, I think, were coming to me, and I was thinking about how the real challenge that I see is networking in our community. I'm involved with Girl Scouts and soccer, and my children are involved in lots of different organizations. And I'm busy running a program, and there's friends that are busy running another program, but we don't have an opportunity to get together and talk about what we can do. I don't think that Willits needs to create more government to run a REX program. I don't think necessarily we need a nonprofit. I would propose that the starting point that I could see for our district would be under the Chamber of Commerce umbrella, create a committee, and I'm more than happy to join that committee and get us started and start bringing all of these different groups together and talk about, okay, how can we make this work? Because it really does relate to business. We talk about wanting to support ourselves, but there's a way to tie recreation to business. For example, with Willits Youth Soccer. I host a soccer tournament. I don't just host a tournament. I don't call people from other towns, say, come here. When I invite them, I tell them, when you're here, we plan it on a day that something else wonderful is happening. For example, Roots of Motive Power. We know they're having a big event, so we let teams from out of town know Roots of Motive Power's got something going on. I give them a list of all of the restaurants that they can eat at. I tell them a little bit about Willits, in case you want to spend the night, and you might want to check out the skunk train. And I think that's really what we need to do in these different areas, is when we're talking about recreation, is reaching out and saying, hey, come check it all out, because businesses will flourish in our area, and it can be a really good partnership. So I think we need to think a little broader and how we can self-sustain. And that way we'd be able to utilize the Grange more. We'd be able to use the Kids Club. We'd be able to use the Arts Center, so many different things. That's a cheap way to get started. So let's think about that as an idea. And I would be more than happy to get on board and get that started.
So, panel, do you have any other comments?
Just a couple. Again, I just want to thank you all for coming in. Thank you, Brooke. I've been trying to get you to come to, like yes! Brooke just knows all these other people that, wouldn't necessarily know about this, and so and we both talk, so she'll spread the word, which is awesome. I did also want to bring up the fact that the city is very interested in this. We have a number of council members and our mayor here, and city manager as well. We're actively exploring this as an option, whether or not we continue to pursue it. Just so you know, city government is aware of this. Also, the new hospital is going to be such a boon for our community, and for those of you who don't know, beyond the existing facility, there is a broader plan to have specifically a pool. Margie has said that she's going to retire when she's 80, but she's not 80 yet, and she really would like a swimming pool there. Now, I don't know if that would be a public, that conversation would have to happen. One of the challenges with the school district is that, there's safety requirements to being able to use that pool, which limits the access for the public year-round, for example, and we're outdoors, and it's expensive to heat. There's some limiting factors, but the hospital is also working on some good things, and I'll definitely reach out to the chamber. As I mentioned, they have a lot on their plate. They're kickstarting a lot of new initiatives, but we all talk about needing to have that calendar that if you don't, that you check the calendar before you have your event, to stop the crab feed being on the same night as the fire department, as the this and that, because as I just mentioned at Rotary the other day, if you think there's not stuff going on in Willits, you are not paying attention, because there's something going on all the time. But having that central hub, I think, is a stumbling block right now. And I know the chamber was doing I think they're doing a new website right now. So maybe we can have a recreation page, that maybe they'll be willing to take on doing a catalog, but we'll just need to reach out to them. Do you want to say anything? Wrap up?
I just thank you for letting me be involved in this, and I've learned volumes tonight just being involved, so it's really encouraged me privately, and I will definitely share within my own social circles to come to these and to try to dial in and get connected into what the rest of the community is interested, because in the quiets of my own home and with my other homies, as we're going for our walks with our kids in our strollers, we think we have these brilliant plans that no one else knows what's going on and the needs of the community. And so it's quite refreshing to attend this and to hear the involvement and wowzers and other things that are happening, and so much that I'm not dialed into. So I echo the necessity of having something to pull us all into one, so that we can at least start supporting what is here, and if that can grow into something bigger, I'm game. So thank you again for letting me attend tonight.
Thank you, Dan, for coming over the hill. Feel free to get dinner while you're here. And stay the night. Sure.
So over on that table, I put a couple of petitions for it would be to put it on the ballot in June of 2016 to have our county become a charter county. And it would just be the first step in doing that, because there would be a charter commission, which would write up the charter, and then that would come back to a vote. So the first step is to get on the ballot the idea of becoming a charter county. Basically, it gives you more local control. The county can make certain kinds of ordinances if it's a charter county that are not allowed under general law counties. And there are several already in California, and they have done some innovative things. One of the innovative things I hope we're aiming for is to have a public bank, a county bank, which could invest our county funds into infrastructure and things that we want in our county instead of sending it off to Wall Street. So that's one thing. Also, if any of you do have funds that you would like to invest in local economy, I'm part of EDFC, the Economic Development Financing Commission, the city representative, and right now we have a public offering that any citizen can invest in. And it's not a huge rate of return, but it goes into our county instead of off, again, to the banks somewhere, way far away. So if you have money sitting in a bank at virtually 0%, please consider it and talk to me and I'll get you more information. It's 2% a year over a 6-year period. So you tie up your funds, and the minimum investment is $1,000, but it can be up to whatever. Right now, the average investment has been $5,000, but anything $1,000 and over, it's tied up for 6 years. You get a 2% return starting in year 3, 4, and 5, and then in the 6th year, you get your principal back as well as the interest. And the first investment that's going forward is a Mendocino wool and fiber project, which is really cool. And Matt Gilbert you talk to him about it, he's got a fire to do this, and it would benefit our sheep ranchers as well as our fiber artists and our weavers, and it's one of these things where it has so much spin-off.
Well, we're really glad you guys all came. It's really important for our community to get together. The only way we can actually move forward with any strength is when we come together and we talk to one another and we figure out where's the place where we triangulate. If we disagree over here and over there, there's some place in the middle where we might agree. That's where we can get action. So I'm really glad to see you all here. Thank you.